For over 30 years, Bolliger and Mabillard have had some of the most recognizable and photographed coasters on the planet. While at an amusement park, you'll likely be affixed to a B&M at some point throughout the day, whether it be on the ride or watching the twisted track from the ground. Let's take a look at some of the best from back at the beginning to see which takes the title for best B&M roller coaster. Walter Bolliger and Claude Mabillard are two of the most famous names in the industry. Starting work at Giga in the 70s, who at that time subcontracted with Intamin, they worked on projects such as the Space Diver, which had 4-across sit-down trains, and the stand-up coaster, both of which had the box track. These Intamin coasters even have that recognizable roar that B&M coasters are known for today. In 1987, Walter and Claude left Giga after a change in management to start their own company, Bolliger and Mabillard, consulting engineers. Impressed with the track work done on Vortex at Kings Island, an aero-built roller coaster that debuted as the tallest coaster in the world in 1987, Walter Bolliger contacted Ken Miller from Southern Ohio Fabricators, who would make the track we all know and love through 2004. When that company ceased operations, Miller and investors bought the property, building, and equipment. Claremont Steel was formed, where the track is still manufactured for B&M today, keeping manufacturing secrets under one roof for over 30 years and evolving the precision and quality of the build. One example being eliminating the need for ball and socket joints to connect the track to a support, keeping ongoing maintenance costs lower for clients. At full production, Claremont Steel can make about 15 elements per week. The first coaster under the B&M name opened in 1990, a stand-up model for Six Flags Great America in Gurnee, Illinois.
Six Flags Great America to be among the first to experience the Iron Wolf. What sets this space-age roller coaster apart from others is the design. You're riding in a standing position,
which still can be found operating now at Six Flags America as the Six Flags chain's first conversion of a stand-up coaster to a floorless model named Firebird. The ball and socket joints can still be seen on this early iteration of the B&M roller coaster. When the general manager of Six Flags Great America had the idea of an inverted coaster, he went back to B&M, who made it a reality and changed the coaster world forever with a brand new type. The world's first inverted roller coaster would open at the Illinois Six Flags Park in 1992. With the car mounted underneath the track, B&M quickly became one of the biggest players in the amusement industry. It was the first time something like this was ever seen, and the revolutionary design gained the attention of everyone and delivered a ride like no other. Today, this Batman inverted coaster is one of the most popular coaster models, with over 10 more copies and mirrors being built around the world.
Yes, it's right here. It's so good! Batman is the best!
That we're able to create an entirely new experience that probably has never existed in the theme park with every element of a thrill ride. I mean, this is the most exciting ride. This is probably the big daddy of them all now.
1 year later, a custom inverted model would open at California's Great America, but it wouldn't be this coaster to take over Best B&M from Batman, because something was opening on the other side of the country.
Kumba, the largest, longest, and fastest steel roller coaster in the southeastern United States.
Favorite coaster is definitely Kumba. It's wild, it's fast, and it leaves you dizzy but wanting more at the same time.
Kumba at Busch Gardens, Tampa, Florida would open just 1 year after Batman in 1993. B&M's sixth coaster and the company's first sit-down coaster, it featured 7 inversions, trenches, and a tunnel, interacting with the flat Florida land in a terrain-like way. It also featured the world's tallest loop at the time. Today, the coaster still has one of the most photographed moments of any ride around the world with its famous interlocking corkscrews. But just months later, a new inverted coaster was about to open across the pond. John Wardley from Alton Towers, England, had ridden Batman 1 year earlier at Six Flags at Great America. He enjoyed the coaster model so much that he ended up bringing the model to England with a custom layout.
And those people that set out to build the highest, the longest, the fastest, or whatever, end up probably with a very dull ride. And of course, next year, someone comes along and tops them.
The ride would be built in a massive hole that was blasted out to adhere to height restrictions in the area, with not one foundation of the coaster at the same height as the other.
Now, for the technically minded, it is a multi-inversion suspended roller coaster. But for the rest of you, it's just designed to scare you.
Although the ride was only 42 feet tall, it would have more than 100 feet of track difference from its highest to its lowest point, proving that height and speed isn't everything in a roller coaster. This was a great fit for the inverted model, as the track worked with the terrain to have riders' feet just meters from the ground throughout much of the layout.
2 years of planning, about 10 million pounds, and we're about to see if this thing flies. I think I know what to expect.
It was the perfect way to use an inverted roller coaster and seemed as if the coaster type was a solution made just for this type of problem.
That was the most sensational thing I've ever done.
More Batman clones as well as stand-up coasters would be built over the next few years, as well as a few still famous coasters before Nemesis would get a true contender. But would it be enough?
As of its completion, it is the world's tallest and longest inverted steel roller coaster, and it has a whole host of first-of-a-kind elements. The largest vertical loop at 104 feet, a 60-foot vertical loop half buried in a trench, and the Immelmann, an inverse diving loop named after a German stunt pilot.
In 1996, Busch Gardens Tampa would open Montu, another inverted roller coaster model with intense one-of-a-kind elements in a massive 3-minute long layout. Busch Gardens took the flatland of Florida and dug down to use the inverted model to its advantage with low-to-ground maneuvers and dives in and out of trenches. The invert reaches 60 miles an hour and rises 150 feet into the air. The coaster still consistently ranks well in yearly coaster rankings and is always talked about among enthusiasts for whippy transitions that aren't found on modern, computer-heavy calculated roller coasters. And so, Montu takes the crown from Nemesis. More inverted coasters and stand-ups would be built for a couple years by the company before Alton Towers would bank on a new coaster type by Bolliger and Mabillard to up the ante.
Welcome to the unknown. Welcome to eternal darkness. Welcome to Oblivion. Don't look down.
The dive machine was created, where riders would dangle over the edge before dropping near vertically straight down into the ground. While still one of the most awe-inspiring coasters to watch today, it proved to be a one-trick pony, and so Montu remains king. It's 1998, and Montu is widely considered as the best roller coaster in the world. Would B&M ever build something as good as the amazing invert, or had they already peaked? Many more incredible coasters would be built in years to come, and 1999 brought some new coaster types from the Swiss design firm, making it one of the most standout years for the company. B&M's first hypermodel, an airtime-filled roller coaster meant to give riders the feeling of weightlessness with large hills and no inversions. Busch Gardens Williamsburg, Virginia got the first one with Apollo's Chariot, with Fabio on board at the grand opening, who unfortunately had a slight encounter with a bird. 1999 was also the year we were introduced to the world's first floorless coaster, Medusa, at Six Flags Great Adventure. This model takes the feet-dangling experience of an invert but places the cars on top of the track. The year also brought us the first launched B&M, Incredible Hulk at Islands of Adventure, and at the same park, what was arguably the most famous inverted coaster ever built.
This is the castle of Merlinwood Forest, the site of a powerful battle between two fearsome dueling dragons, one with breath and fire, and the other ice.
An inverted coaster with multiple near misses and 2 separate tracks, Dueling Dragons was very ambitious, but because the layout was almost forced to go a certain direction to duel, without the near miss elements there weren't really any standout moments, and sometimes it felt as if it had a lot of straight track used to get the train where it needed to be. And for this reason, that inverted coaster just an hour away would still rank higher in almost every yearly coaster poll. The early 2000s brought some record breakers into the ring, including Dominator at Guaga Lake, Superman, a terrain coaster at Fiesta, Texas, Katoon, a massive invert in Italy, the coaster on every enthusiast's list. Bearing similarities to the Raptor model, Katoon ups the ante with a taller lift and low-to-ground turns in its 1,200-meter-long layout. Montu or Katoon? This is a toss-up among enthusiasts that have ridden both in a tough comparison. With quick transitions and a similar length on both coasters, it's either Katoon with the intense helixes and speed turns along the ground, or Montu with the better mix of elements and tunnels. I'd let the viewers vote for this tight matchup over on Instagram, and Montu did edge out the competition. The early thousands also brought us Kraken and Wildfire, Nitro and Silver Star, and Alton's Secret Weapon No. 5.
Trade in.
Assume the position.
Assume the position.
Prepare for air. Assume the position.
And
prepare for air.
Another new coaster type from B&M, this flying coaster places riders onto their stomachs before dispatch to simulate the feeling of flight. It's an amazing feeling, and the attraction used the terrain to its advantage to look incredible from pathways and give riders that sense of speed. It's also one of the few coaster types that allows the track to be inverted or traditional. The first Superman also opened at this time, but it won't be a flying coaster that takes away the lead from Montu. B&M changed up their game by showing that they could also build in compact areas, with Demon at Tivoli Gardens, Denmark, with tilted elements that kept B&M's comfortable reputation when navigating through them. By 2006, floorless coasters got more unique, dive coasters got longer and included jaw-dropping elements and inversions. The Flyer got bigger and more intense, and what is arguably the best hypercoaster in the United States opened at Six Flags Over Georgia. Goliath has stronger airtime than other hypers, as well as a layout that was filled with both positive and negative Gs. Montu and Goliath would go back and forth, swapping positions in the Golden Ticket Awards, and have even tied previously. But there's one thing that puts one in front of the other for me. Goliath has amazing airtime and a strong helix. And while this strong layout can't be found anywhere else, there are similarly amazing air hills and helixes out there on other roller coasters. Yet Montu has elements that only Montu can replicate, like going through that Batwing while sitting in that back left seat. It is such a sought-out coaster and still keeps the top spot. The company would go on to build multiple roller coasters each year. Some of the most beautiful coasters were opening from Bolliger and Mabillard, including a new model, the Wing Coaster, which would quickly prove to be a park favorite for their graceful look and smooth ride. The minimal heart lining through the track made for striking elements that were visually stunning to watch. B&M had opened more of this coaster type than any of their other models from 2011 to 2014. 2012 brought one of the most sought-after hypercoasters to date, Shambhala at Port Aventura, Spain. It's also brought the first 300-foot-tall coaster by the Swiss designers, joining two other manufacturers, Morgan and Intamin, to hit the 300-plus foot mark. Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland proved to be a crowd favorite for its extremely smooth and re-rideable experience at such a great height. But with a similar smaller coaster found at the same park that brought more airtime than the massive 300-foot ride, and other coasters from a different manufacturer that were more thrilling, it wasn't the amazing entry into the gig leagues that enthusiasts wanted from B&M. 2013 rumors start to stir, and something big is coming to Kings Island. An announcement is found on the official park's website by enthusiasts. The Bat returns to the park, this time as a massive wing coaster, the largest in the world. But was all this a hoax put out by the park themselves? 2014, Kings Island steps up their game, and we know it's got to be good because it's taking place of the legendary Son of Beast roller coaster. Banshee arrives instead of the leaked wing coaster. It's only fitting for another inverted coaster to take over the top spot, right? The longest and fastest B&M invert ever, newer style elements and a change in terrain keep the speed high throughout the entire layout. It had that mean look like Montu, but did it ride mean like Montu? Plus, a massive element called the pretzel knot. It had the makings of a winner. The elements were forceful, the pacing was fun, and the mixture of new elements worked really well together. But something was amiss. You look back at the ride experience and don't remember any quirks or characteristics that really stood out in the attraction. A track with high positive Gs, hang time, and a very different mix of elements. But it all just happens almost too well, too computerized, plus a newer style of restrictive, somewhat uncomfortable vest restraint that doesn't allow you to feel the experience like the older, roomier, over-the-shoulder restraints do. The interaction with the terrain is also minimal versus the dips and dives on the trenches of Montu. It's the quirks and coasters and those whoa moments that do it right, and Banshee's movements are just too flowy, too blended together, too perfect, and so Montu holds on to number 1. 2014, a site with Centurion is found by enthusiasts on Carowinds' official website, signaling something was coming soon to the Carolina theme park. But this site was intentionally placed to throw off enthusiasts. Something else was about to arrive. Carowinds had an ace up their sleeve for the 2015 season, B&M's biggest coaster ever built. Fury 325 has a balanced layout that starts with speed in low-to-ground sections, a fun turnaround, near misses, and then hits a few air hills before the brake run. The coaster ranks highly in yearly coaster polls, and with newer elements that had never been seen before on a Hyper or Giga coaster, it was well received by coaster enthusiasts and the general public. It was a big step forward from Leviathan and takes the top spot of Best B&M Coaster for now. Highly themed and crowd-pleasing B&Ms would open for years to come. Elements would become crazier. Records would be broken. But nothing would come to take the top spot from Fury just yet. As other manufacturers have stepped up the game with brand new elements and never before seen designs, many think B&M have synced from top manufacturer to making average rides with a high price tag. One thing is for sure, their inverted model produces some of the highest ranked rides and smoothest experiences of any coaster type on the planet. B&M brought a ton of new elements to the roller coaster world, and their rides are some of the highest quality attractions on the planet. Will they advance their designs in coming years, or continue to play it safe with their tried and tested models that are always general public pleasers at every theme park? Almost all B&M coasters are still operating today, and all the ones highlighted are still worthy of a place in a top 10 coaster list. With so much precision and longevity, it makes sense that a B&M ride costs so much for a park to purchase and why they are such a popular buy. The company has now built 120 coasters as of 2020 and has no signs of stopping. So when looking at the B&M roller coaster, I'd have to say the best performing model is the invert with not one bad coaster built. And Busch Gardens definitely got the most out of all their B&M models, with incredible records being broken with just about every edition. Montu held on to the record for 19 years before Fury 325 came along. But how long will it keep the title of Best B&M Roller Coaster?